Finally, there's some good news coming out of the Advent Health Training Center. Plus, we got keys to the game and predictions against the Jets coming up this weekend. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Bucs podcast. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. I am James Yarcho, finally rejoined by David Harrison. Reunited, and it feels so good. You can check out everything we're doing.
I was going Eminem on that whole thing. I don't know why you went the other direction.
You can check out everything David and I are doing over at BucsNation.com. Follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at DHarrison82, and at Bucs_Nation. David, welcome back.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you holding down the fort.
Absolutely.
Happy to be back. Surprisingly enough, James, somehow I gained Twitter followers while I was gone.
They missed you, and they were trying to get your attention.
Apparently, I guess. But I appreciate everybody who stuck through, sent their positive vibes, and I appreciate you, of course, for carrying the show. But yeah, I mean, a couple weeks left until the playoff push, so excited to get it going and excited to get into a new year as well.
Absolutely. And there's plenty to discuss. You missed all the fun. You missed the COVID fun. You missed the injury fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's been a lot. The reinvigoration of Ronald Jones after all of the weeks that we talked about Ronald Jones coming back and playing some more and doing all this other stuff. And that is the week, and I mean, to make it even better, all the stuff that I've been dealing with for the last week plus all kicked off after the 9-0 loss to the New Orleans Saints. So surprisingly enough, like that 9-0 loss to the New Orleans Saints was not even close to the worst part of my last couple of weeks or whatever. But back to the winning ways, looking forward to potentially what's going to be 2 more wins to wrap up the regular season. And with any luck, a Green Bay Packers loss here and there and a number 1 seed, maybe a bye week before the Buccaneers host a playoff game, which we didn't get to see them do in 2020 until the Super Bowl. And like you mentioned in the cold open there, some good news for Buccaneers fans. Mike Evans seen practicing again, running routes for backup quarterback Ryan Griffin, officially or originally tweeted that it was for Tom Brady, but I think it was Rick Stroud at Tampa Bay Times who sent out that tweet and clarified later that it was actually Ryan Griffin, which is good for multiple reasons. One, meaning that he obviously must be off of the COVID reserve list, which isn't officially official at the time of this recording, but he's in the facility. He's around teammates. So unless the Buccaneers just don't like draft picks, then obviously I think it's safe to say that Mike Evans is out of COVID protocol, and he's close to returning, which is important because he's the number 1 receiver on the team. He's a star, and he's got a very important reason to be on the field for these last 2 weeks if he can get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, with the loss of Chris Godwin for the rest of the season, it's great that they have Antonio Brown back, right? Because Antonio Brown is a legitimate receiving threat, and you're not having to rely on Jalen Darden or Cyril Grayson. Nothing against those guys in particular, but they're not Antonio Brown. But you throw Mike Evans back in the mix, and all of a sudden, things are going to start opening up a little bit more for AB. They're going to start opening back up for Gronk, which was something I talked about earlier in the week. But Mike Evans can return this weekend. David, he's 101 yards away from 1,000 again. And let's just say it's a little bit easier for him to average 55.5 yards over the course of the 2 final games than to come back in week 18. Still seems weird to say that, and have to get 100 receiving yards in order to reach that 1,000-yard plateau yet again. And of course, he has the bonus game to do it this year. So I guess people are going to say, put the asterisk on there or whatever the case may be, unless he goes out against the Jets and puts up 155 and 4 touchdowns, which is definitely something Mike can do. But it would be great for him to have yet another 1,000-yard season and remain perfect in that sense.
Yeah, and look, people can talk about the 18-game season all they want. Look, at the end of the day, the records are what the records are. And I don't know, we don't go back and say, well, this is a record, but you look at, the NFL before they had 16 regular season games, they had what I think it was like 14 at some point in time. I mean, the evolution of the game is the evolution of the game. Eventually, it's all going to catch up. Either way, I don't care if it took you 18 games or 17 games or 16 regular season games to get to 1,000 yards. 1,000 yards is still the mark of a very good and successful season for a wide receiver. And honestly, even if you want to throw in there that there was an extra regular season game, well, Mike hasn't played in every single game, so he's still going to accomplish it in less than a full 16 game schedule. And looking at the New York Jets pass defense here, they're averaging 250 yards through the air surrendered every single game, 28th ranked pass defense, and they've played a lot of offenses who are doing a lot worse on their offense than Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown. So definitely a good possibility that Mike does it this week, which would be great. Would not fit with my key to the game and my key to this weekend's game, James. And for those who saw the crossover, you've already heard a little bit of this. If you read the title of the crossover, you pretty much know where I'm going to go. My key to this game is less Tom Brady, more Rojo. Not just because I missed out on the Rojo game on reacting to it here on the show and talking to our listeners and Bucs fans about the Rojo game, but because of the health concerns for this team. And I don't mean to belittle anybody or to put anybody in a lesser status as a human being than anybody else. But listen, if this team were to lose Ronald Jones for the playoffs, it's a little bit less damning than if they were to lose, say, Tom Brady for the playoffs. How do you keep Tom Brady from getting injured? You keep him from getting hit. There's two ways. Well, there's really three ways you do that. You do that by designing quick passing options for him, which the Buccaneers do a pretty good job of. You do that by protecting him up front, which the Buccaneers do a pretty good job of. And you do it by running the ball. Tom Brady's going to touch the ball in every snap in the game until at least Blaine Gabbert comes in, and that's fine. But the faster he gets the ball out of his hands, the less defenders can hit them or hit him. I don't believe the New York Jets have a dirty defense or a dirty player on their defense. So when the ball's out of Tom's hands, he should be clean. He should be good to go. And you keep him safe. You keep him alive, relatively game speaking, right? Not physically speaking, for the rest of your season, because with some of the losses, Chris Godwin, and especially on defense, you need Tom Brady. The more attrition you have, the more you need that quarterback. So keep Tom Brady as healthy as possible. The Buccaneers ran the ball 31 times last week, ties their season high for runs. 30 of them were designed. One of them was that classic Tom Brady scramble that we all love to see and don't ever panic about when we see him running. Do that again. Do more. You have 32 carries. Top your season high this week. That is my key to this game, to the Buccaneers not only winning, but coming out of it healthy for the final week as they get ready for the playoffs.
I don't dislike that. And Ronald Jones, last week looked really good against the Carolina Panthers. And I compared it to kind of the mirror image of 2020, right? Where Rojo was the workhorse all year long. Then all of a sudden at the end of the season, Ronald Jones misses some time. You have fresh legs, Fournette become playoff Lenny. And the rest is history. So you're kind of seeing the inverse in that, right? Where Leonard Fournette has been the workhorse. He earned that. He became one of the biggest passing threats out of the backfield in the National Football League. He gets hurt. Now Ronald Jones with those fresh legs gets to come in and he gets the job done. And I still have to tip the cap to a 55-yard touchdown run by Keyshawn Vaughn, though I don't think we're going to get that this week. In fact, I think we're going to see a little bit more Le'Veon Bell than we saw last week. Another week with the team, another week getting acclimated to the offense. But all of that plays into exactly what you're saying, and that is pound the rock all day long against a terrible defense. You can throw up and down the field on them, but go ahead, run the ball, control the game, and get out of there with a win before you end up with any more casualties.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, and even better, look, we've talked about the bye weeks, right? And I've already kind of gone on record saying I think maybe the Buccaneers don't need a bye week from a preparation and a competitive standpoint. Obviously, from a health standpoint, you could use it. But listen, if the Buccaneers win, obviously they're in the playoffs already, so that's not really a concern. But the Green Bay Packers clinch the number one seed if they win and the Arizona Cardinals defeat the Dallas Cowboys, which we won't know if that's going to happen until after the Buccaneers game is over. So if that scenario also plays out later in the afternoon, the Buccaneers aren't getting the number one seed. If you want, you can go ahead and get your pseudo bye week the following week against Carolina Panthers. I don't know, maybe roll Kyle Trask out there with Le'Veon Bell and see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of people are looking forward to this weekend to see what happens with their New Year's resolutions. And a lot of those resolutions are going to be about getting fit, getting healthy, eating healthier. Just make sure that you include Built Bar in that plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. It makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good, you'll actually want to eat one. Unlike other protein bars, which are chalky, waxy, tastes like a chemical spill. We've all had those, and it's a terrible mistake. Built Bar, not a terrible mistake. Great decision. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets boring. By week 3, you're thinking it's not worth it. Give me my Reese cups. No, Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate. And if you're a Reese cup fan like myself, you can dive into a peanut butter brownie. Oh, so good. Most of these Built Bars, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, 17 grams of protein. You compare that to a normal average candy bar, that's usually around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, dozens of net carbs. You got the peanut butter and brownie, you got the cookies and cream, you got the salted caramel, mint brownie, coconut almond, tons of flavors, and they're always coming out with new limited time flavors. So make sure to check out built.com to see the latest new flavors. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
Back now for segment 2 here at the Locked On Bucs podcast. Thank you, Bucs Nation, for making us your first listen or your first view every day. And make sure you check out the Ultimate College Football Preview 2021. Local experts, betting advice, and draft analysis. The most comprehensive college football preview is live right now. You just heard my key to a Buccaneers win. Not really the key to them winning the game per se, James. More so a key to staying healthy for the playoff push, like I kind of mentioned with running Ronald Jones more, but also like you mentioned, the way that the rise of playoff Lenny happened, it's kind of mirroring itself with maybe the rise of, I don't know, postseason Rojo. Maybe that's going to be a thing that we see happen. So that all could bleed into each other. But what is your key to this Week 17 matchup between Tampa Bay Buccaneers and, quite honestly, one of the worst teams in the NFL right now, the New York Jets?
Well, real quick before I get into my key, are we in agreement? Go Cincinnati Bearcats. That's who we're pulling for.
Absolutely.
And if Cincinnati happens to lose, we're all go Big Blue because nobody wants to see Bama win again.
That is too far.
It's worth a try. My brother-in-law is a huge Ohio State fan, and he said he will root for Michigan over Alabama. Number one, because it's the Big Ten, and if you're going to
root,
you might as well lose to the champ. And also, he's sick of Bama.
I will root for the Big Ten. That's all I will say.
Okay, fair enough. But
go Big Ten team and or athletic club.
We are all go UC Bearcats for what's about to go down.
We're fighting Luke Fickles. Let's do this.
Fighting Luke Fickles. That is the best name ever. And I want it on a t-shirt immediately. My key to the game. Unfortunately, over the course of the last week or so, I have been talking about a lot of negative things on this podcast. Beyond my control, lots of negativity coming out even after a win. My key to the game is the Buccaneers as a unit, as a squad, as a team. You got to tune it all out. And I realize that's easier said than done. You say these guys are professionals. They should go in there. They play football. Just go in and do your job. Yeah, I understand that. But when you've lost 2/3 of your starting corners again, you have lost your top 2 receivers. You've lost your top running back. You have lost your head coach. You have lost countless players to injuries or the COVID list. You just got back 2 players off of a suspension because of violating COVID protocols. That was another distraction. You're going to play in cold weather, which we all know is going to be beaten like a dead horse when it comes to the Buccaneers playing in cold weather because they've only won like twice. You have to tune it all out. Even missing Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette, potentially Mike Evans, potentially Antoine Winfield Jr., but he has been at practice. That's a positive sign. Missing all of these players, missing your head coach, there's still no reason that you should lose to the New York Jets. It doesn't matter if you're passing the ball to Keyshawn Vaughn, to Le'Veon Bell, to Cyril Grayson. Please don't pass it to Jalen Darden. The Jets are a team that you should still absolutely smoke. And it'll probably come on the defensive side of the ball, even without Levante David and Shaquille Barrett and potentially Jason Pierre-Paul for the second week in a row. And David, I don't know how you feel. I'm of the opinion, you know what? You have the Jets left. You have the Carolina Panthers the second time. Leave JPP on the sideline. Let him chill over there, hang out with Shaq Barrett. They can cut it up. They can mentor. They can kind of coach up the young guys like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who has done a phenomenal job when he has stepped in. But let these guys get rest. You don't need Shaq and JPP against Zach Wilson. You
Yeah.
don't need Shaq and JPP against Cam Newton or Sam Darnold or PJ Walker or Jake Delhomme if he trots out there at 67 years old.
Right.
Rest your guys, but tune out all the nonsense. Tune out the COVID nonsense. Tune out the injury nonsense. Focus on football for the next 3 hours and beat the snot out of a team that you should beat the snot out of.
Yeah. And do not start Jake Delhomme in any fantasy formats if he does take the field in any way, shape, or form.
Could be a DFS steal for the
No,
price that he will be listed
unless
at.
he's free and gets a 10-point head start. No, absolutely not. No, it's
Uh,
a good point. And you know, this time of year, I mean, December football, right? We always say December football is the most important
mhm,
football to play of your life. And honestly, again, a lot of that noise could get clarified if you know. Obviously, people want the Buccaneers to have the number one seed. If the Green Bay Packers take care of business and the Arizona Cardinals help them out a little bit, then that noise gets clarified for you. And as much as that's a negative in the light that you want your team to have a bye week, you know, the first week of the playoffs and automatically be in the divisional round, it simplifies things for the team a little bit too because they already know kind of what they're playing for and all those things. You got COVID going on. There's a lot of distractions around the NFL world, around just society in general. And I'll steal a quote from Ron Rivera for the Washington football team, the other team I cover here on the network, that they're real people. They're not robots. So they're putting up with real, and he used an expletive that I'm not going to share on
mhm,
this show. So it's important to remember those kinds of things. And, you know, and I know we have a tendency to look at the players and say it's football, just go out there and do what you need to do for the next 3 hours, like you said. And like you acknowledge that's easier said than done. And, you know, before anybody discounts that, like how many times have people gone to work? I mean, I've seen people who say they don't want to go to work because the Buccaneers lost. It's not even something you did or didn't do, and you already don't want to go do your job because of how that's going to impact your mood, your environment. So imagine all these other things. It's very real. These are very real situations, and the record hanging over Mike Evans' head. Like if he does go out there and play, you know, the team's got a decision to make too. Are you going to put him out there when he's not necessarily 100% to try and get the record so you can shut him down the following week, or are you going to try to hold him out the following week? And now the Carolina Panthers basically just triple covered Mike Evans to make sure that he doesn't get that record, kind of the reverse Brett Favre, if you will, or extend his record as it were. So yeah, it's very important. And I think that the team, the coaches, the leaders on the team basically just kind of need to acknowledge. I think it's important to acknowledge everything that's going on, all the situations going on, and say, we see it all. Now let's collect it all and let's just put it over here. Let's leave it in the tunnel. We'll pick it up on our way out. You know what I mean? But for right now, let's leave it here instead of trying to say just ignore it, because ignoring things doesn't make them go away. So acknowledge it, set them aside for 3 hours, like you mentioned. Go out there, get business done against a team like you mentioned that you should be able to get a win against, and then get off the field. And if they take care of business, our listeners, they got a little bit of Christmas money left over. Maybe they're confident the Buccaneers can take care of business the way that you and I are. And if they are, they get over to betonline.ag, turn that confidence into something they can pick up on the way out of the game. And that is more money, because betonline.ag has you covered all season long as we get towards the playoffs with props, odds, and more lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all your sports action this season. Head over to that updated desktop or mobile website, sign up today. And when you do, use the promo code locked on and you'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. If you're not just there for football, or if you're not there for football at all, maybe you just like watching football and you don't want the added pressure of putting money on it. They've got basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC. They've got casino games. Throw down a couple of hands of blackjack. Maybe that's your game. Don't wait. Take advantage of all the amazing offers left for the 2021 season. Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Wrapping things up here on a Friday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. James Yarcho, David Harrison on Twitter at JYarcho_Bucs at DHarrison82. Also, in addition to the fact that we're all rooting for the University of Cincinnati Bearcats, everybody also needs to root for the Baltimore Ravens. Just throwing that out there. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're a Buccaneers fan, and you need to root for the Baltimore Ravens. Probably no Lamar Jackson, but they activated Huntley. So that's a positive sign, because he took the Packers to the wire,
Yeah.
beat the Rams, and then the Bucs are basically going to lock up the 2 seed. Just throwing
Yeah,
it out.
that young man is playing for a roster spot or an opportunity. Like I think he might be
He's-
playing his way into an opportunity. So
He is fun to watch,
yeah,
no doubt about it. So
yeah.
with that, David, let's dive into our prediction segment. of the show. We only have a couple of these left. Obviously, the final prediction segment that we're going to do will come on February 11th when we're making predictions about the Buccaneers in Super Bowl 56. But right now, we have to focus on the New York Jets in week 17. So let's dive in. Who is your predictive player of the game?
Yeah, well, obviously, if I want to see more running game than I do passing game from the Buccaneers offense for a little bit of preservation and a little bit of the fact that it's kind of working, right? Then I think my player of the game is going to be Ronald Jones. I agree with you. I think we're going to see a little bit more Le'Veon Bell than we did already. I don't think we're going to see as much Keyshawn Vaughn. I don't think we're going to see Cyril Grayson get more than the one carry that he got last week. Maybe he matches that number. So Rojo is going to get the lion's share of the touches. And again, I mean, if you're in Ronald Jones' camp, and there's no doubt, I think in my mind, right, that he had to have been frustrated with what everything that's been going on. Maybe he deserves some of it, maybe he doesn't deserve some of it. I don't know what, all the internal workings and the politics that go into playing time and all that stuff. Whatever it is, you have your opportunity right now. And we talk about baggage. Take that baggage. Not saying you got to forget it, pretend it never existed, but again, take it, leave it in the trunk of your car when you get to the stadium, or well, I guess in the bus when you get to the stadium this week. Go into the game, take care of business, and then when you come back, maybe you unpack that and you carry it for another week or so. Just kind of remind yourself of where you've come from. But bottom line, come in there, show this team that you can be a guy they can rely on to carry you against an NFL opponent.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that pick. I think we are going to see a healthy dose of Ronald Jones. The Buccaneers now averaging over 100 rushing yards per game. Took them a while to get there,
Yeah.
but they're averaging just a little bit over 101 rushing yards per game. My predictive player of the game, I'm going to flip to the other side of the football. As I talked about in segment two, there is no Shaq Barrett. There may not be a Jason Pierre Paul. I don't think there should be a Jason Pierre Paul, and a guy that absolutely dominated on the defensive side of the ball, garnering pressure, getting to the quarterback, creating mistakes, creating hurried throws is the rookie, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. He has been absolutely outstanding. The more playing time he gets, the better he gets. You can see why he was their first round draft pick. And he's going to be the one that they look to help generate that pressure on the outside while Sue and Vea do what they do on the interior. I think we have a big day coming for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. I'm saying multi-sack game coming and a couple of quarterback hits, lots of quarterback pressures on the rookie Zach Wilson, and the whole time Joe's going to be saying, "Yeah, I should have gone number 2, not you, because you ain't it." With that, I'm going to dive into my bold prediction, and some mistakes are going to be created by JTS. And the beneficiary of that is going to be somebody that has to slide in because of the COVID issue in the secondary with Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy Bunting. Unlikely they'll play. They could clear protocol. I went over all that before. But Richard Sherman is going to have a larger role in this defense this week. Give me Sherman with 2 takeaways.
I like that. I like that, especially because I have the Buccaneers defense still as my fantasy defense. I have ridden all season, obviously, except for the bye week with the Buccaneers defense.
Ride or die.
Um, I'm not in the playoffs, so I guess that kind of can tell you what happened.
Yeah.
My bold prediction, though, I'm going to go back to the offensive side of things, and it's pretty bold. We were talking about this before we hit record, and you mentioned it's pretty stinking bold. I'm going 2 touchdowns to a tight end, which I know it kind of goes against my key to the game, right? Less throwing, more running. But look, you get into the red zone, use those tight ends, use them against a fairly weak passing defense. And I think OJ Howard gets 2 touchdown catches. It's a thing that could happen.
That is the boldest of all of our bold predictions this year.
Listen, so something that's interesting, right, that we were working through before we joined the show. OJ Howard, the most snaps OJ Howard has played in his career without getting at least 1 target was against the New York Jets. He's only faced the New York Jets once in his career. That was in 2017, his rookie season. He played 50 offensive snaps in that game, 0 targets. That is, again, the most snaps he's played on offense without receiving at least 1 target. I think we reversed that fortune, and you found out an interesting stat, James, actually, that goes along with that in 3 games against AFC East opponents in 2021, OJ Howard only has 4 total targets against the 3 combined and 0 against the Buffalo Bills. So listen, he's got 4 in 2 games, 0 in 1 game. So let's go 4 targets. 2 of the catches are touchdowns, and I get to look like a genius. And on the way to a Buccaneers 31-17 win, which Gil Arcia of BucsNation.com is not going to be happy about because I told him 31-21 was my prediction. But I've decided during the course of this episode that the Buccaneers are going to win 31-17 as 13-point favorites this weekend against the Jets.
So what you're saying is OJ Howard is the difference in this game.
Basically, yes. On two catches of Tom Brady's like 18 pass attempts, if I get my way.
Well, I'm glad that I'm not in the fantasy playoffs anymore because Tom Brady would be my quarterback and I would not be happy with only 18 pass
Hey,
attempts. But then
two
again,
tutties is good.
I scored the lowest points that I did all year in the first round because Tom Brady and Chris Godwin and everybody else just decided to not perform at all 2 weeks ago. It's not good when your kicker outscores your quarterback. It's not good at all. With that, I am going to take the Buccaneers in a landslide. This is the largest margin of victory that I have predicted this year, and I stand by it, even with all the missing pieces. Give me the Bucs to win 27-3,
That's
and
a
that
big margin of victory.
and that 3 is probably going to be a 50-plus yard field goal in the fourth quarter. It's not. This is not going to be a pretty game for the New York Jets. Shout out Alan Schechter. I know
Yes,
he would
sir.
have been excited to trash some to talk some trash to us for this one.
Yeah.
With that, David, we are going to get out of here. Thank you to all of you that called into the voicemail line this week. I know I didn't get to all of the voicemails that were sent in. We appreciate all of you. Please continue to call. We're going to continue to get to as many of those as we can throughout the week, as we always do. Can't always get to everyone. So you got to make yourself stand out just a little bit so that if it's a tough decision, we have to default to the more entertaining of the calls. But you can do so by calling in to 813-444-5841. And thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or first watch every day, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. We'll be back on Monday recapping the win over the New York Jets. But before we get to that, make your second listen of the day the Locked On Bets podcast, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. Check out everything David and I are doing over at BucsNation.com. Follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at DHarrison82, and at Bucs_Nation. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, be good to one another. We thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.